Yes, sir.
Hey, I have a question about Matthew chapter 27, verses 50 through 54. Um, so it says that when Jesus died, pretty much that the veil of the temple was torn in two, and the earth shook, and graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose and came out of the graves after the resurrection. So I was having a conversation with some Jehovah's Witnesses again, and they said that everyone who's died since the beginning of the world are all still asleep in the grave. And so I referenced the scripture. I said, well, what about Matthew chapter 27? They told me that is not consistent with scripture, and that it only means that the earth shook so much that dead bodies rolled out of the grave and had to be reburied. And so I was wondering if there was like a textual variant that I was missing, or did they really actually get up and walk around?
No, there's not a textual variant you're missing. Rich, I'm getting me coming back at me big time this time. So I'm not sure if that's happening on your end or just what, but I'm hearing me much, much stronger than I did last time. So just letting you know that's there. Hopefully you can still hear me as well. This is a text that evidently you might not be aware is the focus of a tremendous amount of controversy from about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe now, when Mike Licona, Dr. Mike Licona, put out a book, a lengthy book on resurrection, and basically identified this as a mythological text with apocalyptic overtones, which is a nice way of saying it didn't really happen, and I'm not really sure what in the world it's about, is what he was saying. And so he was attacked by Norman Geisler for denying inerrancy, and it became sort of a text that people argue about a lot. And so I have commented on a number of times because I certainly disagreed with Licona, but I didn't agree with Geisler's approach to the response to Licona. And my Muslim friends like to pick this one up, and they call it the zombie apocalypse, and atheists use that. And in fact, in the debate between Licona and Ehrman about 6 or 8 months ago, maybe a little bit more now, that's what Ehrman called it, and Licona agreed with the terminology, which I found very distressing. So I have addressed this a number of times. There's no way that the Jehovah's Witness interpretation has any possibility whatsoever, because you'll notice that it says the tombs were opened and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised, and coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. And so you have one term coming out of the tombs, and then Aelthon, they entered into the city. It's not that they rolled down a hill or something. They entered into the city and appeared to many. So there's no way that this is just simply some bodies that were kicked out of graves that people happened to walk by and see. That's what a lot of people wanted to try to do. First of all, this is a limited number of people. And secondly, they would have had to have been people who had recently passed away. Why? Because otherwise they wouldn't have even been recognized for who they were. It says they went into the holy city and appeared to many. So somehow they were known. Well, how would they be known? Well, they're wearing grave clothes. Well, I don't think that's what appeared would mean. The idea would be that this is a symbol of the first fruits of the resurrection. Maybe these were people like Anna or Simeon, who had been greatly looking forward to the Messiah. And so they're the ones who are raised up, and they get to see the beginning of the proclamation of the gospel. We're not told. But what isn't said is that all of the dead are raised. This is a small number, and it's localized around what's called specifically the Holy City. which has been made holy by the sacrifice of Christ outside of its gates, I might point out. And since it says they appeared to many, there's no way around the reality. These are not zombies or something. These were recognizable individuals who would have had some connection to people who were still alive at that time to know who in the world they were, and therefore what the significance of their having been raised from the dead at the very same time that Jesus dies upon the cross would be. There is no explanation given by Matthew. It is not mentioned by Mark or Luke or John, and therefore people just automatically dismiss it or do whatever else. But that ignores the fact that even John says if everything Jesus had done had been written down, the world itself couldn't keep all the books that would be written. So the point is that each one of the authors of the Gospels has the right as an author to determine what he's going to say and what he's not going to say, what he's going to cover, what he's not going to cover. And this is an instance where something takes place that only Matthew covers. Now, if you want to go naturalistic and go, well, why wouldn't Mark have mentioned this? Or why wouldn't Luke have mentioned this or whatever else? There may be things that Matthew knew that Luke didn't. I mean, Luke says he interviewed people. Maybe he didn't interview someone who had been witness to this. Maybe because Matthew has a particular audience, primarily Jewish people, that they would find this partial resurrection something that was extremely significant. There's all sorts of possibilities. And only if you take a naturalistic perspective and ignore all of that, can you just simply dismiss it out of hand. But no matter what you do with it, you have to let it stand. There is no question that it is a genuine part of the original writing of Matthew. Anybody who wants to say, well, this has been inserted later, zero evidence. Well, it wasn't in the original Hebrew Matthew, zero evidence of the Hebrew Matthew. It's all speculation. You're just not wanting to deal with the text as it stands. It's there, and there really isn't any way around it. At the same time, you have to be careful about reading too much into it to try to expand it beyond the very limited few words. I mean, it's literally maybe about 14 words or something like that, and there's no further explanation of it. So you have to allow for that to be the reality.
Okay. Thank you.